$50 billion.
Wow.
I mean, that is the number on the headline for Microsoft Cloud's quarterly revenue.
It's a massive figure.
It effectively doubles where they were just a few years ago. But if you dig into that earnings report from January 28th, there's another number, a much more interesting and, frankly, a much riskier number on the expense side.
You're looking at the capital expenditure, the CapEx?
Yeah, I am. $37.5 billion.
In a single quarter.
In 90 days. To put that in perspective for you, that is more than the GDP of some small nations.
Right.
And the market reaction was, well, a little mixed, because that's a mountain of cash going out the door. So the obvious question is, what are they buying?
The easy answer is data centers,
Uh-huh.
but the more nuanced answer, and really the one that defines this specific week we're looking at, January 26th to February 2nd, is that they're buying independence.
Independence.
Yeah. They aren't just buying more computers. They're building their own closed-loop infrastructure. We saw the launch of their custom silicon, the Maia 200, and at the same time, we saw the software layer shift from just chatbots to actual agents.
Okay, so that's the stack we need to unpack. This isn't just about Microsoft making more money. It's a fundamental architectural shift.
It really is.
We have new hardware that changes the economics of AI. We have agents now living in your Excel spreadsheet, changing how work gets done, and then a whole new set of security problems trying to keep up.
It's the full vertical stack. From the silicon wafer all the way up to the spreadsheet cell.
So let's start at the bottom of that stack, the hardware. On January 26, Microsoft officially introduced the Maia 200.
Right.
Now, we all know training these models is wildly expensive, but my understanding is the real financial bleed for these companies isn't training anymore. It's inference.
That's the critical distinction to make. Training is teaching the model, which you might do once. Inference is running that model every single time a user asks it a question. So when you have, 300 million commercial seats in Office 365, and they all start asking Copilot to summarize their emails at 9:00 a.m. on a Monday.
That is an inference crush.
It is. And if Microsoft has to pay NVIDIA margins for every single one of those queries, the whole business model just collapses. They have to lower the cost per token.
So the Maia 200 is their answer to that margin problem. I was looking at the specs. It's built on the TSMC 3-nanometer process. That is some very expensive shelf space at the foundry.
It is, which just signals how serious they are. But the real story isn't just the node size, it's the math.
The math.
The Maia 200 has native FP8 and get this, FP4 tensor cores.
Okay, let's pause on FP4, floating point 4. That is incredibly low precision. Usually when you drop precision that low, you start getting garbage outputs because the math isn't granular enough.
Right.
Why is Microsoft betting the farm on 4-bit math?
Well, it's a calculated risk. They've found that for inference, for just generating the answer, you don't actually need the same level of precision you needed during training, not if you have the right architecture.
Okay.
By dropping to FP4, they can process data way faster and with a lot less energy. They're actually claiming the Maia 200 has 3 times the FP4 performance of Amazon's Trainium 3.
3 times. That is a direct shot at AWS.
That's the claim. And they also said their FP8 performance exceeds Google's TPU v7. So these are very aggressive benchmarks.
And the architecture itself is interesting. They're using something they call a fully connected quad.
Which implies high interconnectivity, right?
Exactly. It's 4 chips in a single tray that communicate as if they are one big processor.
Yeah.
It's got 216 gigabytes of HBM3 memory moving data at 7 terabytes per second.
And that bandwidth is everything.
It's the key.
It is. In the AI game, you're so often limited by how fast you can move data from memory, not just how fast you can compute. By creating this massive data pipe between the chips, they can hold these huge models like GPT-5.2 right there in memory and serve them up super fast.
And this isn't just a paper launch, right? This isn't a coming in 2027 kind of thing.
No, not at all. It's live. It's running in the U.S. Central Data Center in Iowa as we speak, and it's rolling out to U.S. West 3 in Phoenix. This is the hardware that's going to power OpenAI's GPT 5.2 and all those M365 Copilot workloads.
Which brings us to the why. Why should the end user care? Because this hardware is what enables the new software features. You can't roll out autonomous agents to millions of users if your inference costs are through the roof.
Correct. The Maia 200 basically creates the economic breathing room to launch something like Agent Mode.
Let's talk about that. January 27th, the Agent Mode hits general availability for Excel. I feel like we've been hearing about agents for ages, but this feels different. It's not just a chat window and a sidebar.
No, it's the difference between having a consultant and having an employee.
Okay, explain that.
Before, Copilot in Excel was a consultant. You'd ask, hey, how do I write this formula? And it would give you the text, but you still had to copy it, paste it, check it.
Right. You were still doing the work.
Agent mode is autonomous. It's an employee. You give it a high-level goal like analyze the Q3 sales data, find the underperforming regions, and then forecast Q4 assuming 5% growth. The agent just goes into the grid. It manipulates the data, it iterates if it hits an error, and it presents you with the final work.
That autonomous loop, that's the game changer. But what really caught my eye in that January 27th update was the multi-model choice.
Yes. This is a fascinating strategic pivot.
Isn't it? Microsoft has poured billions into OpenAI. You'd expect them to lock everything down to GPT models. But now, inside Excel, a user can choose Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.5 as the brain behind the agent.
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually really smart. Microsoft seems to realize that sticking to a walled garden of just OpenAI models might actually push enterprise users away.
If they prefer Claude for certain tasks.
Exactly, for certain reasoning tasks. By allowing Claude Opus 4.5 into the Excel environment, Microsoft keeps the platform usage. They don't care if you use Claude, as long as you're using Claude inside Microsoft Excel.
It's the operating system play all over again. Just be the layer that everything else runs on top of.
Precisely. And this agentic shift, it's not just in Excel. On January 30th, we saw updates for Word and PowerPoint, where agent mode is letting Copilot actively edit and draft content, not just suggest it.
Okay. And for developers?
For developers, the GitHub Copilot command line interface now supports the Agent Client Protocol, or ACP.
ACP. That sounds like plumbing, but I guess plumbing is what makes cities work.
It's exactly that. ACP is the standard that lets third-party tools talk to these agents. It means some other developer can build a specialized tool, say for supply chain logistics, and it will speak the same language as Copilot. It opens the door for a whole network of agents.
And that idea, a network of agents, that leads us perfectly into the research segment. There was a paper published on January 29th from Microsoft Research called The Open Agentic Economy.
Right. This paper helps us see where this is all headed in, 5 or 10 years. The researchers, David Rothschild and his team, are basically proposing that we're moving past the phase where a user talks to a bot. The next phase is bot to bot.
An economy with no humans in the loop.
An economy where humans set the intent and the agents execute the transaction. The paper argues against walled gardens. In this open agentic economy, your personal finance agent should be able to negotiate directly with an airline's pricing agent or a landlord's leasing agent.
Okay, ground this for me. So if I want to rent an apartment, I don't go browse Zillow. My agent talks to the landlord's agent.
That's the idea. Your agent knows your budget, your credit score, your preferences.
Yeah.
The landlord's agent knows the inventory and their acceptable risk profile. They negotiate the lease terms in milliseconds. The paper really dives into the protocols needed to make that safe. How do you trust the other agent? How is the transaction verified?
It shifts AI from being a productivity tool, something that helps me write an email, to being a distinct economic actor.
That's the phrase to underline right there, economic actor.
We also saw some research on the medical side this week with UNARJA on January 27th.
Universal report generation. Yeah, this tackles a huge data problem in healthcare.
Which is?
Radiologists and doctors, they don't write reports in a standard format. A chest x-ray report from a hospital in Boston looks completely different from one in Berlin.
Which makes it impossible to train AI on that data.
Very difficult. So UNARJA used reinforcement learning on about 560,000 studies to create a model that can adapt to all these different reporting styles.
So that standardizes the output for them.
It standardizes the understanding. It can take in all these messy, varied formats and generate accurate, standardized findings. It significantly improves accuracy in radiology reporting, which is, a very high-stakes environment.
High stakes is a good transition to security. Because if we have agents negotiating our rent and reading our x-rays, the security flaws become a lot more terrifying. And we saw a major one this week called Langrinch.
A clever name for a really nasty vulnerability. This was disclosed on January 30th, and it affects LangChain Core.
And LangChain is that framework that, basically everyone is using to build these LLM apps, right?
It's one of the most popular open source frameworks, yes. And this vulnerability, CVE 2025-68664, had a severity score of 9.3 out of 10. That's critical.
What was the attack?
It's a supply chain vulnerability. The flaw allows an attacker to execute their own code through the framework itself. So if you're a developer and you used a bad version of LangChain to build your company's internal chatbot,
An attacker could hijack your bot to get its sensitive data.
potentially, yes. It just highlights how fragile this whole agent ecosystem is. You're not just trusting the AI model, you're trusting all the libraries and the tools used to glue it all together.
And most companies don't even know what tools their employees are using. The 2026 Data Security Index came out January 29th.
Right, that survey of 1,700 security leaders.
The headline stat was that 32% of data security incidents now involve AI. But the shadow IT number is worse. 70% of knowledge workers are bringing their own AI tools to work.
70%.
So they're just bypassing the corporate firewall to use whatever shiny new tool helps them get their work done faster.
Exactly. They're pasting proprietary code into some random online converter or uploading customer data to an unauthorized PDF summarizer. It creates this massive visibility gap for security teams. You can't secure what you can't see.
Microsoft did take some offensive action this week, though. I saw the takedown of a platform called RedVDS.
Yes, that was a coordination with law enforcement. RedVDS was a virtual desktop service, but it was basically for cybercriminals. It provided disposable computing power used to generate deepfakes and run fraud scripts.
So taking it offline disrupts their infrastructure.
It does. It's a game of whack-a-mole, but at least they're hitting the malls.
Let's shift to market impact. We started with the $50 billion cloud revenue. But who's actually adopting this stuff at scale?
The earnings call gave us the broad strokes. Azure grew 39%, Copilot daily users are up 10x. But the specific partnership that caught my eye was with the Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 team on January 29th.
Formula One is always a great test bed because the amount of data is just insane.
It's not just the volume, it's the latency. In F1, they're running millions of simulations during a race to decide when to pit, which tires to use.
Every millisecond counts.
Literally. So they signed a multi-year deal to use the new Maia 200 chips for all that race telemetry.
And why Maia specifically, instead of just standard GPUs?
It goes right back to our first point about inference. They need to run these simulations instantly. The claim is that Maia's architecture lets them run way more simulations per second than their old setup. If Mercedes can run 50,000 strategy simulations in the time it takes Ferrari to run 10,000,
They have a huge statistical advantage on the track.
that's a perfect example of performance per dollar, translating directly to performance on the track.
We also saw a more, let's say, grounded application in healthcare. On February 1st, the Dragon Copilot Physician Practice launched.
This is a nuanced product, part of Microsoft. It's a specialized version of their clinical documentation AI, but it's priced and packaged specifically for small, independent practices, fewer than 10 medical providers. It listens to the patient visit and drafts the clinical notes.
And it's capped at 100 licenses per customer.
Right. So it shows Microsoft trying to push this tech down market. It's not just for giant hospital systems anymore. They want it in your local clinic.
So looking at this whole week, from January 26th to February 2nd, you can see a really clear narrative emerge. You have the engine, the Maia 200, which is lowering the cost of inference.
Yeah.
You have the vehicle agent mode, which is driving autonomy in the software. And then you have the road rules, the security patches and governance reports, trying to prevent a crash.
That's the ecosystem view. Microsoft is betting that by controlling the chip, they control the cost structure of this entire agentic future.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to chew on. We've talked about that open agentic economy research.
Right, where your agent negotiates your rent.
It sounds liberating. But if the agent doing the buying and the agent doing the selling are both running on Microsoft's Maia chips, using Microsoft's agent client protocol, and living inside the Microsoft cloud, who is that economy actually optimized for?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. If one company owns the marketplace, the currency, and all the participants, do we really have an open economy? Or just a very, very efficient walled garden?
Something to consider the next time you let an agent auto-complete your spreadsheet. And for the developers listening, please check the show notes for the patch details on that CVE for Lagrange. Don't let it steal your data. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Stay curious and stay secure.